conversación
is about performance of software.
es acerca de la performance del software.
Because I started programming in 1969.
Comencé a programar en 1969.
And computers were completely different than in those days.
En computadoras que son completamente diferentes a las que se usan en el día de hoy.
So we are going to discuss those differences and how it impacts.
Entonces lo que vamos a discutir era lo que es ahora y lo que era en el pasado.
There are many different types of processors in the world today.
Hay muchos tipos de procesadores diferentes en el mundo hoy.
Most of you are familiar with the Intel processor,
Como los procesadores Intel,
which is what we call a complicated instruction set.
que tienen un set complejas, sí.
But there is a different type of computer also.
Hay también computadoras diferentes.
One is designed by a company called ARM, A-R-M.
Hay otras hechas por diferentes.
And this is a reduced instruction set computer.
Y tienen un diferente set de instrucciones.
And if you have either an iPhone
Si usted tiene cualquiera, o un iPhone
or an Android phone,
o un teléfono Intel,
you have an ARM processor inside of it.
tienen adentro un procesador.
Because these use a very small amount of electricity.
Porque usa muy poca cantidad de energía.
Now, ARM does not produce these chips.
Lo que producen estos chips.
They only design them.
No solamente diseñan.
And consequently, other companies like Samsung and Hitachi and Texas Instruments.
En consecuencia, compañías como Samsung, Toshiba.
So these companies all wanted to have Linux working on their chips.
Tienen Linux trabajando en sus chips.
And they all hired engineers and they all sent patches to the Linux kernel group.
Sí, tienen grupos de ingenieros.
But this was confusing because all these patches did the same thing.
Estos arreglos hacen las mismas cosas,
Only in a slightly different way.
pero en formas diferentes.
And so the kernel group was very upset about this. The kernel group was very upset about this.
¿Cómo? Claro, estaban bastante upset, sí, bastante enojados.
So an association of these companies was created called Linero.
Hay una compañía, Dinero,
And instead of each company hiring 50 engineers, they only had to hire 2.
sí, que tiene 50 ingenieros, que son dos. Contratan dos.
And now they all work together
En vez de trabajar todos juntos
to be able to produce better software.
para estar aptos y producir mejor software.
ARM is making a 64-bit computer system.
ARM está haciendo computadoras del sistema de 64 bits.
It's already being used in the iPhone,
Está bien con el iPhone,
the iPhone 5 and 6.
el iPhone 5 y el 6.
And so
Entonces,
we are now interested in having all Linux working on the 64-bit ARM chip.
entonces están usando Linux para trabajar a 64 bits.
We'll see a little bit more about this later on.
Les voy a mostrar algo.
Now, as I said, I've been programming since 1969.
Y como les dije, yo comencé a programar en 1969.
And continually, over the last 45 years, I've heard the term CPUs are fast enough.
Y después de los 45 años, el término CPU.
And I go, really? I mean, I don't think they're fast enough until I can talk to them and you can understand me as well as you can understand him.
Well, can you repeat it again, please?
I don't think the CPUs are fast enough.
Yo no sé si los CPU son procesadores son suficientemente
until I can talk to them and they can talk to me.
Yo les puedo hablar a ellos me pueden hablar a mí.
And I will be able to understand them at least as well as you can
Yo no sé si
understand
estoy apto para como me entiende Eduardo.
That is when they will be fast enough.
Eso porque no es lo suficiente rápido.
I also hear that
Perdón, porque yo le hice una broma de que, bueno, todos nacemos con un procesador que es we were talking about. Tenemos un procesador natural de 64 bits y con los años le digo, yo ya voy a estar en 8 bits. Entonces, por eso que a veces la traducción simultánea es bastante difícil, por lo menos para mí.
I also hear that Java is the only language that we need.
Acá es el único el lenguaje es lo único que necesitamos.
And I hear from these professors that nobody codes in assembly language anymore.
Ninguno de mis profesores ya usa lenguaje ensamblador ahora.
And that if they did, that virtual machines
Las máquinas virtuales,
would make the architecture knowledge obsolete.
con su arquitectura, absolutamente ya no se necesita.
And I believe that all of that is crap.
Yo creo que ya todo eso no va.
Because I deal with what I call real problems.
Que hay problemas reales.
It is not a real problem unless it is at least a petabyte of data in size.
Hay un problema realmente.
It is not a real problem unless it uses at least 20,000 processors working together.
Dice, hay un verdadero problema si trabajamos con 20.000 procesadores. Mucha gente cree.
Many people like programming in games.
Programa juegos, mucha gente programa juegos.
And that's fine, but it's not something I enjoy.
Es algo bueno, pero no es algo que yo disfrute.
There's another side I enjoy, which is very tiny things.
Las cosas que yo disfruto son cosas muy pequeñas.
And things which are real time.
En tiempo real.
So, for example, your nuclear power plant is melting.
En una planta nuclear, por ejemplo.
And you have to lower the carbon rods to keep it from becoming Chernobyl. You have to lower the carbon rods to keep it from being Chernobyl, from exploding.
Tiene que bajar el acelerómetro y para que no explote.
So the little sensor says, lower the rods.
Sí.
But then what happens is you have to do garbage collection because it's Java.
Todo eso lo entendieron lo que es Java.
And it's looking for a little garbage here, a little garbage
un poquito
there.
Para acá, un poquito para allá, buscando en todos lados.
And after a while it comes back and says, what was I supposed to do?
¿Qué se supone que debo hacer?
Oh, what happens to the power plant?
¿Qué le pasa a la planta de energía?
It melted.
It melted.
Why was collecting garbage?
Está juntando basura.
We don't measure. When I started programming, you measured power and performance.
Cuando yo comencé a programar, no podíamos medir la performance.
By how fast your program finished when you had your computer plugged into the wall.
Cuando no podíamos medir hasta que nosotros encendíamos esa computadora y decíamos lo que significaba.
But today we measure performance by how long our battery lasts.
Pero hoy tenemos mucha performance.
And so it's a different mindset of what is performing.
Tenemos un concepto diferente en mente de lo que es la performance.
Google sets up server farms with 10,000 servers in them.
Google tiene 10.000 servidores.
Google measures performance
Google mide la performance.
by saying, do I only need 9,000 servers?
Sí, eso es lo que hace Google, midiendo la performance en la velocidad.
Can I get the same work done with only 9,000 servers?
Solamente con 9.000 servicios.
Can I save electricity and cooling for these servers?
Imagínense enfriar esa energía que se traduce en los servicios.
And finally,
Finalmente,
in 1969,
en 1969,
when I was trying to program computers,
cuando estaba tratando de programar computadoras,
electronics was extremely expensive.
la electrónica era terriblemente cara.
And so we did not have accelerators like GPUs.
No había aceleradores o CPUs. ¿Sí?
We had field programmable gate arrays, but they were incredibly expensive.
Pero eran totalmente caros.
And it was impractical to use them in our everyday programming.
Era totalmente impráctico para la programación en todos los días.
But today, you can get a field programmable gate array for only a few dollars.
Hoy puedo programar por muy pocos dólares.
And not only can it do the problem faster, but it unloads your main CPU for it to do other things.
Puede utilizar mucho menos el procesador y es algo más rápido.
So I want to show you the second computer I ever programmed.
Quiero mostrarle la segunda computadora con la que yo programé.
It cost $150,000 US
Costaba $100,000
in 1965.
en 1965.
It had 4,000 12-bit words.
Era 4.000 veces menos rápido.
It had no operating system because
No había sistema operativo.
you only ran one program at a time.
Tenías que programar en el momento.
And your device drivers were linked into your program.
los device drivers, los controladores de dispositivo, iban dentro de la computadora.
Because there was no operating system for them to be in.
Porque no había sistema operativo.
And I learned to program this from reading a book.
Lo primero que aprendí es a programar desde un libro.
Because there was nobody to tell me that writing in assembly language was
Porque
hard.
no había nadie que me enseñara el lenguaje ensamblador porque era muy difícil.
It's like a child. If you don't tell a child it's good for them,
Si usted le dice a un chico que es bueno para él,
they'll eat the food.
bueno, dele comida.
You tell them it's good for them,
Si le dice que bueno, si no le da, va a llorar.
And so I believe to write really good code, you have to understand how the computer works.
Yo lo que realmente dice escribir realmente un gran código. Les voy a decir lo que es.
So I have a few examples from my past.
Algunos ejemplos de mi.
Oh. Let me.
Ahora. Okay. It was my fault. I pressed this first.
Let me go back to the slides. Where do we stop? Do we stop with see my computer?
Yeah, the next slide.
Okay. So to write really good code, you need to understand how the computer actually works.
Deben entender realmente cómo funciona.
I was working for a very large company on very large IBM mainframes.
Trabajé para una gran compañía con mainframes.
My job was not to write new software.
Mi trabajo no es escribir nuevo software.
My job was to make other people's programs run faster.
Mi trabajo es que otras personas programen y que corran más rápidos.
And my boss said to me, if I couldn't make the program run at least twice as fast, not to waste my time.
Dice, mi jefe me dijo, si podés programar 2 veces más rápido de lo que es.
So one day, a COBOL programmer came to me and said, I don't know why my program doesn't work.
Dice, una vez vino un programador, me dijo, me dijo,
one time, the COBOL programmer came to me and said, I can't figure out why my program doesn't work.
Dice, no puedo ver por qué mi programa no funciona.
I looked at the code, and I couldn't see it either.
No puedo ver nada.
So what I did was I said, let's see what the compiler is generating for the computer.
Vamos a ver qué es lo que está generando el compilador para la computadora.
And we found out that the compiler was making a mistake.
Lo que estaba haciendo el compilador estaba cometiendo un error.
And the programmer said, I don't believe the compiler could make a mistake.
No puedo creer, el programador me dice, no puedo creer que el compilador cometa un error.
And I said, the compiler is written by a programmer like you.
Y me dice, el compilador está hecho por un programador como vos.
And like you, they had a party the night before.
Y pues,
They came in drunk.
Dice que estaba borracho.
And they made a mistake.
Y cometió un error, sin duda.
But if I did not know how the computer works, I would not be able to tell how that happened.
Dice, pero no sabemos en realidad qué era lo que estaba sucediendo.
Another time, there was a program that ran very, very slowly on the system.
Y el programa corría obviamente muy lento en el sistema.
And when it ran, not only did it run slowly, but all the other programs in the system ran slowly.
Y otros programas corrían muy lentos en el sistema.
So I looked at the program and found out that one machine language instruction was taking 99% of.
Una instrucción está tomando 99% cada instrucción en el sistema.
I said, what instruction is so horrible? Then I found out it was read the clock.
Cada instrucción lee el reloj.
Read the clock.
Read the clock.
Why should that take so long?
¿Por qué toma tanto tiempo?
But then I looked down further.
Porque es mucho más.
Before you could read the clock, you had to stop all of the input-output on the system. Before you could read the clock, you had to stop all of the input-output on the system.
Antes de que pueda leer el reloj, debe parar todo el sistema.
You had to flush all of the cache of the computer out to memory.
Usted tiene todo el flash
y el flujo en el sistema.
All of the registers
Todos los registros en la
have to be
computadora
stored properly.
no se ajustan propiamente.
And then you could read the clock.
Y luego se puede leer esa reloj.
Because this instruction was used to coordinate all
Porque esa
the other
instrucción,
computer
porque está en todo el
systems.
sistema de la computadora, está todo junto.
And I asked the programmer, why are you trying to read the clock?
Entonces le pregunto al programador, ¿por qué usted lee el reloj?
Hundreds of thousands of times during the program.
Cientos de veces en el programa.
He said, I'm trying to find out what day it is.
Entonces quería saber qué era esto.
I said, couldn't you read it one time and store that in a variable?
Solamente almacenarlo una vez. Que lo lea una sola vez.
He said, yes, I could.
Sí, puedo.
And the next time he ran his program,
Y la próxima vez me dijo,
it operated in 10 minutes
anda en 10 minutos.
instead of 10 hours.
Ahora en vez de 10 horas.
Another time, a friend of mine
En otro momento,
multiplying two very large arrays.
en otro momento me lo dijo un amigo mío.
If you do this the way you learned in high school with algebra,
Si lo haces de acuerdo como te lo enseñaron en la escuela secundaria,
it would take a very long period of time.
vas a tomar un largo periodo de tiempo.
Because the first array, you read across accessing cache all the time.
Porque vas a tener que hacer lecturas todo el tiempo.
But the second array, every time you access a variable, you miss cache, you go all the way out to main memory.
Dice, vas a hacer mucho más rápido y utilizar menos memoria.
So he inverted the
Si
second
invertimos
array,
esto,
did the multiplication,
hacemos una multiplicación
and inverted the answer to get the same result.
y tenemos el mismo resultado.
And it went 40 times faster.
Y fue 40 veces más rápido.
These are the types of things, if you understand how the computer works,
Estas cosas, si ustedes entienden cómo una computadora trabaja,
you can actually make a much faster and better and more efficient program.
pueden hacer mucho más rápidos y mucho más eficientes los programas.
But today,
Pero
our
hoy,
students are learning things like Microsoft Office.
sí, pero muchos están con Microsoft Office.
They're learning Java and
Aprendiendo Java
database instead of machine language and databases.
y en Java y en vez de aprender otros sistemas operativos.
And they're doing their programming on virtual machines instead of on real hardware.
Aprender en máquinas virtuales es un duro trabajo.
20 years ago,
Hace 20 años,
when you got a little computer, you would bring programs down off the internet.
cuando no tenías para bajar de programas de internet,
You would type them into the compiler,
directamente te metías en el compilador,
and you would get these things called syntax error
¿sí? Y los sintaxis error.
because you typed something in wrong.
Sí. Y mirabas y encontrabas algo mal.
Then you'd have to figure out why this was happening.
Y te preguntabas por qué.
Today, you get the computer.
Hoy tenés la computadora.
It says if you open it up, you void your warranty.
Sí, abrí perder la garantía.
And then you put a game on it, and you'll never see how the game works.
Y pones un juego y nunca viste cómo el juego trabaja.
Or you write a little bit of HTML and you think you're a programmer. Or you write a little bit of HTML for the web pages and you think you're a programmer.
Se escriben muy pocas cosas. Y son porque se piensa que soy programador.
So this is how most high school students see a computer.
Es así como los estudiantes de la secundaria ven a la computadora.
But this is how a computer really works.
Pero así es como realmente trabaja una computadora.
The computer is not your friend.
La computadora no es tu amigo.
In fact, it hates you.
De hecho, te odia.
And because of this, professors at Cambridge University in Great Britain
De hecho, los profesores en la universidad
said that incoming freshmen to their university knew less about computers than 20 years ago.
y de hecho tienen computadoras de hace 20 años.
And they created something. They created something called the Raspberry Pi Foundation. They created something called the Raspberry Pi Foundation.
The Raspberry Pi Foundation. Sí, sí, está.
And so they designed a little computer called the Raspberry Pi.
Diseñaron una computadora que se llama Raspberry Pi
They wanted,
por $35, como ven en pantalla.
they wanted it to sell for less than $35 US.
Por $35.
and they wanted it to be small enough to fit in a student's pocket.
y para que entre en un bolsillo.
They purposely built it with no case.
El propósito era que no tuviera un gabinete, vamos a decir así.
So the student would have to see how the computer looked.
Entonces el estudiante podía ver cómo se veía la computadora.
And they wanted it to be able to run a free operating system.
Y con la habilidad y el poder de correr un sistema operativo libre, gratis.
And so they chose Linux.
O Linux.
These are the specifications,
Aquí tienen las especificaciones
and it can run a complete Linux operating system.
y que puede correr completamente un sistema operativo Linux.
You put the operating system on a little SD card,
Pueden poner el sistema operativo en una pequeña tarjeta SD
and that can also hold your data.
y que ya tiene una ranura para eso.
One of the things that it specifically has are known as general purpose input-output chip.
Y lo que tiene es un chip de propósito general de entrada y de salida.
That you can turn on and off,
Que lo puedes encender o apagar a través del software.
and you can also sense things from the outside,
Puede traer cosas desde afuera,
both digital and analog.
digital o analógico.
So people started building projects with
La gente está haciendo estos proyectos.
robots,
Robots,
home automation systems,
otros sistemas,
and they started exchanging their project
y
ideas.
están intercambiando estos proyectos.
This inspired another series of companies
Estos spiders de otros servicios de compañías
to also build inexpensive little systems.
tienen sistemas no muy caros.
This is the Banana Pi,
Este es el servicio,
which is 3 times faster than the Raspberry Pi,
que es 3 veces más rápido que el Raspberry,
has twice the amount of memory,
tiene el doble de memoria,
and it has a SATA controller so you can attach a disk.
tiene un montón de controladores
It costs $50 US,
y cuesta $50,
$15 more than the Banana Pi, or than the Raspberry Pi.
$15 más que la Raspberry.
And there are a series of these little computers,
También hay otras microcomputadoras.
each one of them having a special feature
Tienen algunos accesorios especiales
some people might want to use.
que alguna gente querrá usar.
It's also inspiring people to create open hardware.
Estamos hablando de open hardware en este caso, adaptivas paralelas.
So that people can then change the hardware to meet their needs.
Dice que puede cambiar de acuerdo a sus necesidades.
This little computer costs $99 US.
$99 americanos cuestan estas computadoras.
While I think of the Raspberry Pi fine for high school students, this is what I want for university students.
La Raspberry Pi es la que yo recomiendo para los estudiantes universitarios.
This has a system on a chip which has 2 cores
Tiene 2 núcleos
to the ARM9 processor.
en el procesador ARM.
It has a field programmable gate array.
Tiene un lugar para programar.
It has some digital signal processing chips.
Tiene todo en chips.
And it also has a separate chip that has 16 cores in the CPU.
Dice que tiene un chip separado que tiene 16 núcleos en el procesador.
With each core having its own megabyte of memory.
1 megabyte de memoria.
So you load your data and your instructions into the core,
Y dice, se pueden mandar las instrucciones al núcleo
and each core works in the program independently.
y trabajan en el núcleo en forma independiente cada una de estas instrucciones.
The board only uses 5 watts of electrical power.
Y solamente usa 5 watts de energía.
There's another version of the board which costs more.
Hay otra versión,
It has 64 cores to it.
dice que tiene 64 núcleos.
And the architecture of the chip
Y la arquitectura del chip,
can go up to 4,096 cores.
I'm sorry,
You can go up to 4,096 cores.
40.000 instrucciones en el núcleo.
So all of this brings us
Todo esto
back to Monero and our contest.
se hizo en un concurso.
Because GNU Linux started to be written 30 years ago,
Linux no se 30 años atrás,
when memories were extremely small,
cuando las memorias eran extremadamente chicas,
when there was only one CPU per system,
cuando solamente había un CPU por el sistema,
when when there was one core per CPU,
cuando había solamente un núcleo por CPU.
when the pipelining in the cache
Cuando el
was very
pipelining
small,
era muy chiquitito.
when the GNU compilers were not as good at doing optimization.
Cuando los compiladores no tenían esta automatización.
And so people put assembly language into the programs to make them run faster.
Cuando la gente ponía el lenguaje ensamblador dentro del programa para que sea más rápido.
And they did this to the most critical parts of the operating system.
Y esta es la parte más crítica de un sistema operativo.
But now it is 2014.
Hoy es 2.400 veces.
And in some cases,
Escuche mal.
2014, sorry.
and in some cases, the assembly language now makes the programs run slower.
Ya ni antes.
Now,
Ahora,
the assembly language
el lenguaje
makes the programs
ensamblador
run slower
son más lentos. El lenguaje ensamblador,
because the compiler is making decisions.
porque el compilador está tomando decisiones
He gets the assembly language
El
and has to
lenguaje
throw
ensamblador.
away those decisions.
y tira todas estas decisiones.
And when you have a new processor, a new architecture,
Cuando usted tiene un nuevo procesador o una nueva arquitectura,
people have to do work to make that code work on the new system. People have to do work
la gente tiene que trabajar
to make the code work on the new system.
para trabajar en el núcleo nuevamente.
If it had been written in a high-level language,
Es un lenguaje de alto nivel.
the compiler would do all of that work.
Ese es el trabajo que hace el compilador.
And so we have found that there are 1,400 programs in GNU Linux. 1,400 programs in GNU
Tenemos que utilizar
that have
1.400 módulos de ARM
ARM assembly language in them.
en el lenguaje ensamblador.
And what we have to do is convert those programs
Tenemos que convertir todos estos programas
to work with the 64-bit ARM processor.
y con el sistema de 64 bits del procesador ARM.
But we also want to make these programs run faster
Cuando nosotros hacemos de que estos programas corran más rápido,
because we want to see if we can get
Lo que
better
vemos-
performance out of each program.
yo ni ahí antes.
We want to see if we can get better performance.
Que queremos tener mejor performance,
And so we started a contest
Nosotros comenzamos el concurso.
to allow free software people, and particularly university students,
El concurso de software libre y particularmente con estudiantes universitarios.
to help with this effort. The goals of the contest are to make sure that all 1,400 modules work on the new ARM processor.
Era de que todos trabajaras en el nuevo procesador ARM de 64 bits.
Some of the programs,
Algunos de los programas,
just by compiling them and having them go. Others of the programs will need to have some work done and then compiled and tested.
otro de los programadores de los programas fueron testeados en el ARM de 64 bits.
But we believe
Nosotros creemos
that when this work is done,
que cuando el trabajo esté hecho,
the entire GNU Linux system will work faster.
que el sistema operativo Linux va a correr mucho más rápido.
We want to take everything we learned from this effort and put it into a course
Nosotros queremos hacer de que todo esto ponerlo dentro del núcleo
about how to write better performing code for university students,
por estudiantes universitarios,
so that professors will be able to pick up this information and teach their students how to write better performing code.
y que los profesores puedan tomar esta información que se encuentra y evaluar en consecuencia.
But as we said in the beginning,
Como dijimos en el principio,
performance isn't always measured by speed.
la performance está medida por la velocidad. La medimos por la velocidad, la performance.
If you're building an embedded system, it might be measured by how small amount of memory you use.
Es de acuerdo a la cantidad aunque use una pequeña cantidad de memoria.
It might be measured by how good your algorithm is.
Vemos cómo lo hacemos.
It might be measured by
Cómo,
how well, how easy it is to maintain the code in the future.
cómo podemos hacer el código en el futuro.
And there may be more categories of performance.
Y podemos hacer más categorías de performance.
Now, as I said, we have turned this into a contest.
Así fue el concurso.
And if you take and test or report one piece of code,
poner un pedazo de código.
You get a very nice golf shirt as thanks for our appreciation.
Para su apreciación.
If you do more than one word of code, you may find out that you receive a small processor.
Si pone más código, recibirá menos procesador.
Several times a year, people will be picked from a lottery system. Several times a year.
7 veces al año.
And they will be invited to go to a meeting
para medir
called Connect.
Los codecs.
And these meetings are in places like Asia, the United States,
para medirlos en Asia, en Estados Unidos.
And all of your expenses will be paid.
Y todo va a ser, no es muy caro el pago.
Even if you do not win the contest, however,
aún si usted no está en el concurso,
everybody will benefit because
todo el mundo se va a beneficiar.
You'll be working from real programs
para trabajar con programas
that are used by people all over the world.
Hechos por personas en todo el mundo.
You'll learn how to analyze code.
Que trabajaron y analizaron la performance.
And you'll be able to put this in your portfolio.
Para ponerlo en su portfolio para que trabaje.
To show to prospective employers.
Y para la perspectiva de sus empleados.
Now I know that this is an area that has a lot of petroleum.
Yo sé que esta es un área de mucho petróleo.
Petroleum companies use a lot of Linux systems.
Las compañías de petróleo usan mucho sistema operativo Linux.
And programmers who know how to write efficient, well-working code will be worth a lot to them.
No hay muchos programadores eficientes para hacer esos trabajos.
We're also looking for new optimization techniques that haven't been seen before by people.
Por eso estamos buscando por las nuevas optimizaciones realizadas por personas.
So we're also looking for mentors for this program from university professors.
Por eso estamos buscando mentores para estos programas y profesores universitarios.
When you submit your entry to the contest,
cuando usted se mete dentro de este concurso,
we will ask you to supply test material, test data,
probar los materiales,
and also to explain how you did your work in the first place.
Y dónde fue el primer lugar en que trabajaste.
If you're doing the performance side of it, so that was the porting side, just to test to see that it works.
Esto es para probar cómo trabaja interiormente.
If you're doing performance, making the code work faster,
si usted hace una performance y que el código trabaje más rápido,
you'll have to test the code before you do the work and then after you do the work.
Entonces puede hacerlo.
You'll have to do the work. You have to test the performance.
Tiene la posibilidad de probarlo antes del resultado final.
And we will ask you more questions to make sure that you're actually getting that performance.
Entonces puede hacer mayores preguntas antes de ver los resultados de la performance.
We have a website where
tenemos un website.
We will continue to list examples.
Tenemos un website con ejemplos,
resources that you
recursos que ustedes pueden leer.
And over time, we will have more and more resources and
examples. Donde pueden tener más recursos y también ejemplos.
The time frame of this is that the website is already up.
Estamos hablando del time frame.
We have published
para formalizar los programas.
We published all the rules, prizes, and everything.
Publicamos todos los premios, las reglas, los módulos.
We have a list of the modules that need to be worked on.
Tenemos una lista de módulos donde los que se tienen que trabajar.
And you can log into the site and register.
Se pueden logonear dentro del sitio.
Look over the modules.
Buscar todos los módulos.
And say, I want to work on that one.
Yo quiero trabajar con él.
Then you can reserve that module for yourself.
Bueno, puedes bajarte los recursos para vos mismo, por vos mismo.
When you get finished,
cuando terminaste,
I have done this.
Ya hice esto, cuando termine.
And then you'll receive your prize.
Y entonces vas a recibir el premio.
If you decide it's too much work,
si decidís que es mucho trabajo y que no lo podés hacer,
there is no shame in that.
No hay ninguna vergüenza.
We simply ask you log back in and release it so somebody else can work on it.
Bueno, puedes hacerlo con otra persona y trabajar con él y que otro lo continúe.
We're also looking for universities that would like to take this on as a project.
Por eso me gustaría trabajar con universitarios en estos proyectos.
And perhaps give a site for hosting the information.
Para hostear información.
So what you should do now?
Entonces, ¿qué van a hacer ahora?
Register
¿Qué debería hacer ahora?
performance.lanero.org. Read the information about the contest.
Leer la información acerca del concurso.
We recommend QEMU as a virtual machine for doing the porting.
Dice, recomiendo QEMU como máquina para trabajar.
There is now Fedora, Debian, that run on the ARM64
que corren perfectamente en el procesador ARM de 64 bits.
QEMU virtual emulator. And then you can pick the module,
tomar el módulo
and work with it.
Y trabajar con él.
So with that, if you have any questions or comments or ideas,
si tienen algunas preguntas, sugerencias o algunas ideas de lo expuesto,
I will be sitting outside.
Y muchas gracias por esto.